From lattes to lagers, lip balm, liquor, and lollipops, it's the time of year when pumpkin spice is king. But in case you're out there looking around and wondering where's my meats at, I got you covered. I'm making this pumpkin spice beef jerky that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. Normally when I make jerky, I'm using a marinade, something with a Worcestershire sauce or soy sauce type of base, to which I'll add in some sweetener and some different herbs and spices to bring in some other flavors. But today, I'm using a water-based brine, and I'll get to the reason why in just a minute. But first, let's take a look at the ingredients for the brine, and I'm going to start with 2 quarts of water. I've got 1/2 cup of plain salt, 2 cups of brown sugar, and normally I don't go for very sweet jerky and I wouldn't use nearly this much sugar, but in this case I think it's going to be appropriate. Now let's take a look at the pumpkin spices. I've got 2 cinnamon sticks, a nice hunk of fresh ginger, a teaspoon of allspice berries, a teaspoon of whole cloves, and I'll grate in some of this fresh nutmeg. Of course, you can make this nice and easy on yourself and use a tablespoon or 2 of this, but that wouldn't be nearly as fun. Now to put this brine together, we're just going to mix all of these together in this pot. And I'll grate some of that nutmeg in there. Remember that fresh nutmeg is a whole bunch more potent than pre-ground nutmeg, so it doesn't take very much to get a whole lot of flavor. Now I'm just going to bring this up to a simmer. And while it's heating up, I'll stir it for a little bit just to make sure all of that salt and sugar get completely dissolved in there. Oh yeah, now this has come up to temp and it already smells incredible. It's making the whole house smell great, but there's still a ton of flavor left in these spices that we can extract into this brine by letting this steep for a while. And now here is the reason why I'm using a brine rather than a marinade, is because I couldn't figure out for the life of me how I was going to get some pumpkin flavor into the marinade. But with this brine, I can go ahead and cook this pumpkin right down in there. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, because how am I going to have pumpkin spice jerky with no pumpkin flavor? So, I'm just going to cut this guy open carefully. These things are pretty tough. Now we'll get those pumpkin chunks down in there, get that back up to a simmer. And to be honest with you, I don't know that that's going to make a lick of difference in the flavor of this jerky, but I'm not going to be called a liar over my pumpkin spice jerky, so I'm putting pumpkin in it. Now we'll bring this back up to temp and I'll cover it and we'll let this steep away for around 30 minutes. Alright, let's check this out. It's been steeping away here for 30 minutes, and now let's give it a taste and see how we're doing. Oh yeah, that's gonna be pretty good, I think. Definitely got that classic pumpkin spice flavor. So now, let's take out those pieces of pumpkin. Don't think for a minute I'm not going to eat that pumpkin. And I'll let this cool all the way down. Some more flavor is going to come out of those spices as it's cooling down here. And then when it gets nice and cold, we'll get the meat in there. I don't have any venison today, so I'm using some top round, and this is a good choice for jerky because it's fairly lean and it's usually pretty cheap. Now these pieces are still pretty freezy breezy, and that's going to make them a little easier to slice evenly. Now I've got just 3 pounds of this today. It's a pretty small batch of jerky, but this is kind of a novelty jerky, and I'm not really sure how it's going to come out, so I'm not going real big today. So I'll get this fat trimmed off of here and get this sliced up and into the brine. This top round can get pretty gnarly as far as toughness, so I'm going to go ahead and give this a light pummeling with this tenderizer. And we get that right down into some sort of vessel that can hold the jerky and enough brine to really cover it up well. All right. Now we want to get this fully submerged in the brine. Boy, this does smell pumpkin spicy. Give everything a real good churn about. Looks good. And now this goes out into the refrigerator for at least 24 hours, but up to 48. And every so often, I'll go and give it another churning. Alright, it's been a couple of days, so I'll get this strained out and then I'll pat it dry with some paper towels. Now this wasn't part of my original plan, but since this batch of jerky is kind of just for fun, I want to take it over the top. So I'm going to add in about a half cup more of brown sugar. And since I got this pumpkin pie spice here, I'm going to add a little extra flavor to the outside. So just a dash of that. And now I'll mix this together really well until that brown sugar kind of dissolves and sticks all over that meat. And now you can dry this in the oven at the lowest setting, or you can put this in your smoker if you can get the temperature down nice and low. But I prefer to use the dehydrator these days, so I'm going to get these into my dehydrator, set that thing at 150 degrees, and then I'll start checking these at about 6 hours. They're pretty thick cut. And I'll start pulling them as they get done. It's usually going to take between 6 to 8 hours.
Many hours later.
Well, after about 6 hours in the dehydrator, it is finally time to see how we did. And I can tell you that just from the perspective of beef jerky, this thing looks perfect. The color is really beautiful and the texture seems just about right. Now, of course, what really matters is the taste. Check out that bite. Oh. Well, the first hit you get is kind of reminiscent of like corned beef, but then it hits you, there's something else going on here. And once you figure it out, it's a no-brainer. It's got plenty of pumpkin spice flavor without being overwhelming. and there's a nice balance of sweet and salty here. And even though I don't like sweet jerky, adding that extra sugar to kind of glaze this up was definitely the right move. I gotta say, I think I nailed this one. So if you're a pumpkin spice lover or just want to make a fun novelty jerky and share it with your friends, give this one a try, and I know you're gonna love it. Thanks for watching. Ooh, salty.